Daniel Gesson. Welcome to the Imagine Golf Podcast. This podcast is dedicated to getting you the swing and the game that you always imagined. Today's episode is brought to you by Imagine Golf and PXG. You can go to our site, imaginegolf.com, and see all of our offerings, including our free drills, our ebooks, our practice plans and videos, or to book a lesson with me at our state-of-the-art studio right outside of Philadelphia, or virtually through our partner, the golfliveapp.com, from anywhere in the world. We're doing more virtual lessons than ever before. And you can sign up for our free tips and videos that go out once a week, every week, by simply dropping us your email. Well, it seems like I do this podcast, or I talk about this podcast anyway, all the time. I think I did it once before, a couple years back. And I'm gonna do it a little differently this time, but it revolves around how all the big manufacturers, right? And I'm talking of golf clubs. I'm talking about the TaylorMades, the Callaways, the Cobras, the Titleists, how they're actually hurting your game, right? And I know what you're thinking. You're like, what? Clubs are getting better all the time. How could they possibly be hurting my game? Well, that's why you tuned in, right? So we're going to talk about exactly how they're hurting your game, and then we're going to pick out one manufacturer, TaylorMade, and we're going to, grind down, if you would, into what is going on with TaylorMade. And I'm not picking on TaylorMade. I just didn't want to bore you to death. What I talk about today with regards to TaylorMade as a manufacturer could be said about any of these manufacturers, right? But I think you'll find it fascinating, right? Absolutely fascinating. But look, let's get to the point. The golf clubs, the technology in golf clubs, I'm 59 years old. The technology in golf clubs is better than ever. And it's changing, right? I don't know that it's changing at breakneck pace. I don't know that it changes every year over year, but it's definitely changing, right? And even the USGA standards, right? The same standards that were in place. Well, just as a rule of thumb, if you were, just as a point of clarification, the USGA governs clubs, right? So they have guidelines and they have standards on what the golf clubs can be, right? They can only be a certain coefficient. They can only be a certain size. They can only go so far. You get the idea, right? So, so at the end of the day, that's going to limit some of the technology, right? So, but they had the same standards for almost 50 years, and then they changed them twice since then to today, to where we are today. So, I don't see the USGA changing their standards anytime soon, because the professionals are knocking the ball around the course pretty decent right now. In fact, that rollback of the golf ball goes into effect, I think, in a year now, and with the new PGA commissioner, they may shit can that all together, or even just put a hold on that. But you get the idea, right? So so club manufacturers have to work within these rails, if you would, and these rails, it just seems like, even though their USGA puts these rails on them, it just seems like there's no limit to what they claim their new clubs can do. We're going to talk about in a second. I got a little bit sidetracked here, but let me tell you why the equipment today is actually hurting you. Well, one is it's more forgiving than ever, right? And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, if it's more forgiving, aren't I going to hit more shots straighter and farther? Yeah, you are. But you're also not going to find the center of the face as much as you would if you had to, right? Back in the day, the center of the face of a golf club, or the sweet spot of a golf club, was the size of about a dime. Today, it's the size of a $50 on some of these super game improvement clubs, right? So if you're not striking the ball dead center of the face of the golf club, you can't play your best golf. Point paragraph. So I think it definitely hurts in that regard. I think golfers get a false sense that they're better than they actually are, or that the shots they're hitting are better than they actually are. So I know that's kind of esoteric, but I think if you think it through, it really isn't, right? If the clubs were not as forgiving, you would have to focus more and get your game more dialed in. So I think that's number one. I think number two, and I don't think this is even up for contention. I think the focus has shifted from practice, to get better, right? To, well, I'll just get a new driver. This driver sucks. I'll get a new driver, right? Yeah, I can't hit these irons. I'll go, get a new set. right? These wedges, these grooves are terrible on these wedges. And God forbid this putter, I knew this putter was garbage when I got it, right? Instead of, it's not the equipment, it's the or it's not the arrow, it's the Indian, kind of thing. So um I definitely see more than that, or more of that, I should say. And uh equipment sales, bear that to be true, right? Golf equipment sales are at an all-time high, absolutely at an all-time high, right? And I don't know that it's slowing down, right? I think I can make the argument that it's going to go up and to the right pretty significantly for a pretty good time frame, anyway, right? Um, and I think the third reason is that if you take those two things, right, it gives a golfer an illusion almost of like there's a quick fix, right? So if they have a challenge with their wedge game, they can go buy a new wedge. And that if that new wedge is, the latest, greatest, and it's more forgiving, then all of a sudden, their game is better and they fix their game, if you would. When in reality, it's just a bigger sweet spot, or the wedge has different technology than their previous 5, 7 year old wedge. And the shots are better. That doesn't make them a better golfer, right? What's interesting about all this stuff is that the handicaps haven't dropped in almost 26 years. 26 years. So if all this equipment was actually making people any better, that wouldn't be the case, right? And I did a whole podcast on just that, right? So look, I don't. I think there's a time and place, obviously, for getting new equipment. I love new equipment. All right, there's no doubt about it. And being a golf professional, I'm blessed. I get a lot of new equipment all the time, right? But the new equipment doesn't make me a better golfer, right? Looks good in my bag, right? There's no doubt about that, right? And it's fun, but I'd be lying to say that it's making me a better golfer. All right. So let's go into just one of the OEMs, if you would, TaylorMade, as I mentioned earlier, and let's just dive in just a little bit, and let me just prove my point, if you would, on how kind of corrupt this whole system is, if you would, right? Um, TaylorMade, if you don't know, right, is about 40, I think 42 years old, right? So and it was started by just two guys, and literally, a great American story. I forget the first name, but Adams, the Adams, the club maker, and another guy, and they literally mortgaged everything to start. Took their clubs to the PGA show, took a couple demo clubs, I should say, to the PGA show down in Orlando, and came away with $50,000 worth of orders back in the day, and that was unheard of, right, back in the day. So, and the rest is history, right? But I just in for this episode, I was just doing some research, right? So, in 40, so I think in 44 years, officially 44 years that they have been releasing drivers, right? In 1983, they released the first metal wood, right? So what's that? That's 20, that's what, 42 years, right? So in 42 years, how many drivers do you think they have introduced, right? When you think back, again, I keep saying this, but I'm older, right? So I used to get new irons like every 10 years, right? Maybe a driver every 5 years. And then it became irons every 5 years and a driver every 3 years. And then it was irons every 3 years and then a driver every year. And now it's like people are getting stuff, ad hoc, right? All the time, right? Well, the answer is over 85. They've come up with 85 different drivers over those 42 years. Each one of them, by the way, with its own marketing promise of, you know what it is, right? Farther, greater distance, straighter and tighter dispersion. Every single one of them, right? And what's interesting, right? In the years that they actually put some numbers to it, right? So not every year do they say, hey, it's going to go 7 years farther, or 7 years, 7 yards farther. But in some of the years they did, right? If I added up all those claims, all right, you'd be hitting a driver 500 plus yards. The average guy would be hitting a driver 500 plus yards, right? So it's almost this, deceitful, if you would, right? I mean, they know that there's no chance that's happening, right? It just blew my mind, right? A couple years. Check this out, right? Um, Let me see here. I'm scrolling down here because I gotta find it here. In 9 of those years, they had 2 different models, right? Can you imagine, right? And this would be my luck, right? I buy one driver, right? And it's my first driver in 3 years, and halfway through the year and I get it early because I wanna be striping it by April because I live in the Northeast, right? I buy it early, I work with it all winter long, right? I freeze my ass off on the driving range or, go to a couple sim sessions where I'm paying some money, right? And I'm ready to go, and I'm out there April with my new driver, and June or July rolls around, and guess what? They drop another one, right? I'd be furious, right? In 3 of those years, right, they had 3 different models, which just again, when you say that out loud, it's crazy. And in 1 year in particular, 2019, they had 4 different models, right? Now, what are the chances that the technology changed 4 different times in 1 calendar year, right? Well, and let's just back up. What are the chances that the technology changed twice in 1 year, right? 0, right? I would argue it doesn't even change year to year and year over year, right? So what are they doing, right? I mean, they're just taking advantage of a good thing. There's no doubt about it. These claims, these shiny object marketing claims are just that, just flat out, bullshit, right? I picked up 5 of them from the last 5 TaylorMade um, series, if you would, right? So we're going back 5 lines ago, and that would be the Sim Max, right? Decent club. I hit it. It actually sounded really cool. It had a different type of design, especially on the bottom, right? Well, here's the marketing claim for the Sim Max. In our limitless pursuit to help golfers improve, we discovered a new shape of driver performance, an asystemeric soul design. Wow, say that 10 times. And a powerful new inertia generator combined to optimize aerodynamics and speed at the most critical stage of the swing. Oh man, I got to have that, right? And those went for 499, right? That was pretty pricey. And that's actually going on 6 years ago, right? So now fast forward 5 years ago, actually 4 years ago, the Stealth came out, right? The Stealth's marketing claim was actually a lot more simplified than that previous one, right? The Stealth, they said, has 60x carbon twist space to create better energy transfer and a faster ball speed. It's engineered for maximum forgiveness with additional weight positioned low and back for increased MOI. I can almost believe that, right? It looked cool, had a red face, it was carbon fiber, sounded different, felt different. It was more money, $549 on average before any additional shaft upgrade. Um, I hit it, I liked it. Yeah, it felt good, sounded good. So, yeah, I mean, I thought the marketing, you know, short of any, increased distance and all that, I thought the marketing for that was spot on. All right. Next year's though, Stealth 2, of course, right? Has 60x carbon twist space to create better energy transfer and faster ball speeds. It's engineered for maximum forgiveness with a carbon reinforced ring. And this one is $599. I guess this one didn't have the low and back or position the weight, excuse me, positioned low and back for increased MOI, but it was $50 more. Right? Now it was getting dicey too. It was $599, right? By the way, the Stealth 2, the claim was it was going to be 10% tighter and up to 20 yards further than a 10-year-old driver, up to 20 yards further, right? The next was the QI10. The QI10's marketing claim is it's wrapped in a clean and confident package. The QI10 driver has been strategically engineered to help players optimize distance and enhance forgiveness. This is where they started talking about off-center hits, right? Um, this one also is $599, right? I think that's hysterical, right? It's wrapped in a clean and confident package. Look completely different than the Stealth 2, right? claim to be further, claim to be hotter. Um, yeah, just also $599 and, actually had more shaft options, could come with a tour option for another $100 at $699, the head, and, had an additional shaft option, plus 300. So you could walk out of even just a Golf Galaxy, which in my opinion is not a real fitting, if you would. It's like, "Hey, try this, try that, Daniel." But, you could walk out of there with a $699 head and a $300 shaft or a $1,000 driver for probably the first time in Golf Galaxy's history, right? Amazing. And now the current model, which is the QI35. The QI35 family of drivers allows golfers out of all abilities to take their game to another level with more distance from more of the face for unparalleled forgiveness at the same time. All right. So more about forgiveness now, right, than it was distance. So 3 out of those 5 we're talking about distance, 2 out of the 5 we're talking about forgiveness. But each one of them is talking about more of something. And we just know, man, it ain't happening. It is impossible, right? And they are every club manufacturer, right? I should say every large OEM, big box, whatever you want to call them, club manufacturer is guilty of it, right? PXG, all right, they only put new tech or new clubs out when there's new technology. I like that, and I'm partial. You're saying I am partial, but I didn't select them because that was their technology or that was their stance on technology. I selected them because they make awesome clubs, but it didn't hurt that was, a more honest approach, all right, to the marketplace, if you would, right? This is just the opposite. It is an absolute fleecing of consumers. There is no doubt about it. And by the way, right, these things are now this I should have researched this, but the QI10 I happen to know because I have a customer that's trading it in, right? He paid $600 for that, or $599 plus tax. So in Pennsylvania, 600 some dollars, right? Guess what his trade-in value for that thing is? Slightly over $100. It's only a year old, right? Slightly over 100 years old, or $100, right? So, you know, it's again, it's such a racket. It's a corrupt, golf manufacturer freaking racket, that is taking advantage of golfers that want to play the game better. They want to score. And by the way, none of this technology, right? None of this stuff that I just mentioned has any direct correlation to you scoring better, right? None of it. And I say it all the time. You'd be way better served, right? Getting a driver, right? That's a year or two old and get it for $150, 100, whatever, right? It's the same technology as the current one. I can almost guarantee it, right? And put the other money towards lessons, right? Just when you say it out loud, you'd be better off because this is just no way to get a better game. And this is just drivers, right? I could have done the same exact research into irons, into wedge. You name the club set or you name the club type, I mean, and it doesn't matter. Golf balls are getting the same way. Everything is better. Everything is going farther. Everything is tighter. Everything is softer. Everything is more technologically sound. Everything is revolutionary. Well, man, again, just go back to the handicaps. Why aren't they going down then? So, look, it sounds like I'm ranting and raving, and I guess I am a little bit, but I can't take it anymore. I'm at the point, it reminded me almost of the government right now with this Doge thing, right? Where Doge is looking at, the crazy spending in government and no one's surprised, right? And no one's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. They're like, yeah, all right, kind of par for the course kind of thing, right? I don't think anyone is surprised when they spend $699 on a driver, right? And they don't hit it any farther, right? Or their scores don't go down, right? But I do question as to why people do it then, right? And I was guilty of. Look, I got caught up in it myself, but I don't do it anymore. And I highly discourage it with all of our students, right? So Look, if you have 5-plus-year-old equipment, then you need to upgrade. I 100% stand behind that. If your equipment is 2 or 3 years old, right, and you're looking for new clubs, well, make sure you get professionally fit, right? Because anything off the rack is not gonna fit you. 90% of all golfers are playing equipment that doesn't suit them and isn't good for their game. So again, just when you say it out loud, we don't wanna do that. So, but if you're the guy that just needs new equipment because it looks good in your bag, well, that's fine too, and you got the means to do it, there's nothing wrong with that. Have at it. But if you're the kind of guy that's chasing a better score, right? Or that wants to have more fun or lose less balls or whatever your golf goals are, stay away from the shiny objects. Stay away from the marketing claims, right? And put your money in practicing, put your money in lessons, right? And get better at the game from the inside out, if you would, instead of from the outside in. All right. All right, look, that's all I have today. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate the support. We're moving up in the podcast ranks. We actually have an announcement on our podcast coming up next week that I'll share with you. It's pretty exciting for us, and I think it's going to be better for everyone. You can find us on all the directories. We're on them all, and here's getting you the game and the swing that you've always imagined.